Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, one and all, to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joining me today is Grady Hooker, replacing Grady Hooker, who unfortunately is having a bout of syphilis. How are you going today, Grady?
I'm doing good.
Great
I know it was a super short notice replacement. Luckily, I wasn't doing a whole lot today, so I was able to sub in for Grady.
Thanks, Grady. Anyway, let's just cut right to the chase. Cutting out all this banter. I'm not in a banter mood today, Grady. Because what film are we talking about today?
We're talking about Moon Knight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. If I'm being completely honest, I do really like Oscar Isaac, but I didn't like his showing in the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I'm really hoping that, he knocks it out of the park with this one. I really want good things for the Star Wars sequel actors. I really want them to go on to do great things. So, here's hoping that it turns out well. Especially since I do genuinely like the character Moon Knight. I do think he is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I got nothing. It's Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead! Yeah! Okay. So, this is an all-time classic comedy film, released all the way back in 2004, because we are at a point in time when 2004 was nearly 20 years ago, which makes me really sad and feel really old. But
that's because you are old.
And as directed by Edgar Wright, the trio of them, of course, would go on to do several other projects together, including the Hot Fuzz and World's End. Those two, along with this film, would form what's known as the Cornetto Trilogy, with their three very, very loosely connected movies.
Hey, look, they're slightly connected, okay? Slightly.
Yeah, I mean, they're connected by the fact that they star the two same actors, and they're directed by the same guy. That's about it, if I'm not mistaken.
There's a couple of characters that cross over between them, or I guess actors, sorry, that cross over between them, especially with the latter two. But yeah, it was sort of, there were themes that were opened up in each of them that if you kind of pretend that they're the same sort of characters going through, there is some stuff that closes off.
Like, in going into this film, I'm like, oh man, it just occurred to me, it's just like, man, Martin Freeman, he's in the other two movies, but he's not in this one. No, it'd be a shame. I wish they could have. And then he shows up as like a cameo. I'm like, he is in this. Look, there he is, right there.
Yeah, they're really good at that, bringing up people and sort of reusing them throughout the trilogy. Obviously, Martin Freeman being quite a famous man. Surprising to see him pop up, because I also did not remember at all that he was in this movie.
Yeah, like, we'll get to that scene when we come to it, but that scene, I was just like, wait a minute, I recognize most of these actors.
Yeah, I think coming into this movie, again, having watched it a long time ago, the only cast members that I remembered were Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. That was it. I didn't remember anybody else.
Yeah. Like, and it's interesting, just like going into how this film was made. It was started by because Simon Pegg and Nick Frost both worked together on Spaced. Have you seen that show?
I haven't, no.
Neither have I. It's like one of those shows that I've put on my I'm gonna watch this list and then never gotten around to it. That series, it was a TV show, and it was also directed by Edgar Wright. So the three of them kind of met on that series. They worked together, and they're like, yeah, let's keep this going. And then, of course, we got the absolutely wonderful Cornetto Trilogy. And before we focus on this film specifically, Grady, what I want to know is just give me your basic, like, your very quick opinions on the other two movies, which I'm assuming you've seen.
Hot Fuzz was a highlight of the trilogy. Something I will always go back and rewatch. I'd say my favorite of the three, and then World's End being probably my least favorite of the three. It still has the point there, but the genre is not really my genre either.
I feel like that's a pretty common ordering of the films, is that Hot Fuzz is first, followed closely by Shaun of the Dead, and then World's End. It's a good film, it's a solid movie, but it's not I don't think it's really anyone's favorites.
especially not when you have to compare it to Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. Like, that's pretty two stiff competitions.
Oh yeah, they're stellar movies in their own right. Like, Hot Fuzz is genuinely one of my all-time favorite movies. I adore Hot Fuzz immensely. Of course, all three of them were like shout-outs to like very popular film genres from over the years. With World's End being a science fiction film, the classic alien invasion storyline. Hot Fuzz being like the kind of a cowboy cop detective kind of movie, and this one, Shaun of the Dead, being a send-up to zombie apocalypse movies.
Yeah, and it does that, like, obviously we knew the plot coming into it, but it does that reveal pretty slowly. Like, you'll have some things that you can hear on the background of news reports, or the way Shaun comes up and wakes up in the morning with his yawn, the fact they're fighting zombies in the video game. It's very subtle, I guess, on a first watch, and on a rewatch you can just like point out everything, like when you first see them, etc.
I don't know if it's subtle on the first watch. Like, they're pretty just in some of the imagery and some of the very clever ways people are like shot and stuff in the opening sequences. I think like very heavily allude to the whole zombie thing going on there, because something Edgar Wright is very well known for is his very unique approach to like visual storytelling and the way he uses visuals in his movies. Because an example from this one is obviously during the opening sequence when we have all the people going around their like day-to-day lives and going through the drudgery of the modern British life. They're moving through, they're barely cognizant, just going through the motions like zombies, like the cashiers who are all in unison dealing with all like the food, like sitting through the groceries and stuff like that, and the people just all kind of standing slack-jawed in front of the bus station waiting for the bus to come, things like that.
Yeah, and as it gets like further and further along, that sort of opening sequency piece, you got things like the couple kissing outside of the pub, and then when you come back out of the pub, it's very clear that they are not kissing, and so there's stuff like that also does well. That's like you catch that you could miss entirely and be fine with everything.
Yeah, and some other thing, what I love about. I honestly think that the opening to Shaun of the Dead is a textbook example of how to do like a fantastic, opening sequence to a movie, because they build the suspense and they manage to set everything up so well. Like, you've got red on you and stuff and stuff like that keep being repeated throughout the film. That starts off as just something thrown in, then it becomes a joke, and then later on towards the end of the movie, it starts to become like this genuinely impactful thing. The whole what was the name? Because I only see them as Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. I can't see them as anything else.
Shaun and Ed.
Yes, Ed. That's right. How they just like Ed. Ed's holding you back, and how they bring that back towards the end of the movie. And I like how, like, even on a repeated rewatches, I keep finding new things that they set up at the beginning of the movie, and then bringing back towards the end. Like, like the example I just gave, the whole Ed's holding you back, how they repeat that numerous times throughout the movie, but then they kind of bring it back towards the end. And I just love how they do that.
Yeah, I think, obviously we're not going to spoil the end of the movie. Like, people have seen this movie if they're listening to this podcast, or they don't mind. But for me, that thing was at the start of the film where their roommate Peter's talking to them, and it's like, if you want to live like an animal, go live out in the shed, as a statement to Shaun and Ed about Ed. And then we see at the very end of the film that Shaun's keeping Ed, now a animal or a monster, caged up in the shed. And that's my full
still
circle.
Play Time Splitters.
Not very well, but yes.
Yeah. And I did love how they used like actual... It's a small thing, but a lot of times for video games and TV shows, they'll either make up a name or they have their own like cheap carbon copy rip-off of another game. I do like how It is literally just Time Splitters. That's the game they keep playing. And they have a conversation about, oh yeah, remember we used to, stay up late playing Tekken 2. I love stuff like that. No bearing on the discussion whatsoever. I just think Time Splitters is pretty dope.
That's fair, but this also isn't the Time Splitters podcast, is it, Campion? This is the Shaun of the Dead podcast episode.
We could do that. There is that remaster that they released that is pretty dope. Did you hear about that? But wait, just quickly, bit of trivia, Grady. Did you hear about that remaster?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it wasn't like an officially released remaster or anything. It's like a hidden thing inside of, do you remember the Homefront games?
Vaguely, yes. They're not great.
No, they're not great. And if for whatever reason, there's like a fully 4K HD remaster of Time Splitters 2 inside of Homefront: The Revolution, the worst of the Homefront games. But no one ever found it. It was just kind of there, and no one ever bothered to look into the code because it's a crappy game that no one liked. They only found out it was there when the head developer kind of joked about it, and then people dug around and actually managed to pull out the full remake. So now there's like a mod that'll just completely strip out everything that isn't Time Splitters 2 from the game, so you don't have to deal with it. You just play Time Splitters, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, thank you for this sidestep from the movie, but I'm going to throw back to you anyway, because you wanted to talk, I guess, about that mirror group where, it's the same sort of people crossing them by. And that was the next note on my notepad anyway.
I do think it's for starters, it's a really funny scene, and I also like it because it kind of has the implication that there's another zombie movie going on at the same time. And if you look at who was in that group, if you compare the two groups, there is the implication that behind the scenes, there's like a significantly more high budget and better zombie movie going on at the same time, but we're stuck with these schlubs, which I always thought was really funny.
Yeah, it was a cool piece. Obviously meant to mirror, as you say, and provide that like, oh, what if piece, and to be a bit of a help at the end of the movie as well when that group comes back to help them and save them. So.
And it's a really funny joke.
Yeah. And I've heard, I think when I was skimming through IMDb, that a lot of the mirror image versions of themselves had worked together on previous films. So it was a lot of just mates from previous films coming in for that bit of a one-off.
Yeah, like Martin Freeman, as we mentioned before. I don't know the actor's name, but the one who, she plays Fran from Black Books, the same show that Dylan Moran starred in. So there's another one there. And the guy from Little Britain, the guy who played opposite Nick Frost's character, I don't remember what his name is. That's just, for a lot of these actors, I recognize them. I'm like, oh, I know who you are. Don't know their names. Could not tell you.
That played opposite Nick Frost.
That played
got you.
The mirror version of his character Ed is what I mean.
Got you. No, I can't tell you off the top of my head, sorry. Yeah. But yeah, there was a lot of cool little moments like that, just with the cast passing each other. And I don't know, I feel the need to mention at this point, going completely off topic of where we were, just that it was good to have a movie that was actually good. Like, we had a bit of a slog through there on the podcast, a couple of rough ones, a couple of ones that
some
maybe I
disagreements
liked.
about whether or not which films which films were good or not. But I think it's pretty safe to say that this is a film that both of us genuinely think is a fantastic movie.
Fantastic might be too far, but good movie for sure.
Oh, there's a disagreement. I think this is an absolutely brilliant film.
No, I think it is. It's a good one. But this was the first time I'd seen it in a while. It wasn't a movie that I was clamoring to rewatch over and over and over. So clearly, it's not good enough in my brain to always come up and be like, "Man, I want to sit down and go watch Shaun of the Dead."
Yeah, I will say it's not as good as Hot Fuzz, but it's still a pretty good movie.
We're not disagreeing about it being a good movie, okay?
Yeah.
We're just not putting it on the all-time classics, top 20 movies of all time list.
I'd put Hot Fuzz on that list, though.
But immediately opposite that mirror scene that they have is straight into one of my favorite scenes of the movie, because it's called back to continually throughout the Cornetto trilogies, with Shaun trying to hop the fences.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I took like 6 notes for this movie because I figured I'd remember most of it, but one of those is just fence hopping. Genuine laughs from me every time.
Yeah. Oh, man. Like, and there's a lot of things I really love about this movie, especially since I've seen so many zombie movies since watching this one, and especially since there have been quite a few zombie comedy movies released since then. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Zombieland, great movie, but I think this is just a lot funnier. I think because it's a lot more... I think that's because you're just watching, like, 2 schlubby dickheads desperately trying not to die in the midst of, like, this horrific catastrophe.
So what you're saying is Shaun of the Dead is the funniest zombie movie of all time. Campion 2K22.
I mean, it probably is. I can't think of what could possibly beat it out.
I don't know, I'm not a movie encyclopedia like you. I'd expect if there was something else, you'd be able to think of it.
Probably, yeah. And, so, just to give a quick rundown of the plot, it's about these two...
You mean 15 minutes into the episode, you're going to finally mention what the plot is?
Because I kind of thought, oh yeah, we'll do it at the beginning of the episode, and then we just never got to it, so I should probably do it now, Grady.
Sure.
These
Shoehorn it in.
These 2 random schlubby guys living in London, zombie apocalypse happens, and the goal of the movie is to try and get to their favourite pub, the Winchester, whilst towing along Shaun's girlfriend and her flatmates and his mum along for the ride.
Ex-girlfriend.
Well, not by the end. Not by the end.
At the time.
At the time, yeah. And it's kind of like it's sort of like a mashup of the whole because the Cornetto Trilogy also does this, where they do like a mashup of different film genres to make them. For example, World's End is sort of like a pub crawl, wild night kind of movie combined with alien invasion. Hot Fuzz is like an idyllic country film combined with like a fast-paced action cop movie. This one is a romantic comedy mixed in with zombies.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that. I think the Cornetto color for this movie is the strawberry red one for the gore and horror elements, but I imagine probably the romancy stuff as well.
Yeah. Actually, what's Hot Fuzz's color? Do you know?
Hot Fuzz, I believe, is the original blue for the police force, and World's End is green for the Little Green Men.
Yeah, mint. I would have thought it would have been something blue for World's End because of all the, blue blood getting thrown around.
Little Green Men? But yeah, this movie's good. Full stop. I feel like, I don't know how long this episode's going to run, but if this episode runs short, it's not because the movie's bad, it's just because we don't want to sit here just stroking it off all for like an hour.
Well, speak for yourself.
Alrighty, well, strap in while Campion gets his hand ready.
Okay, so, Grady, what is... Like, I know you mentioned a scene that you liked, but is that your favourite scene, or do you have, like, a different, like, favourite scene? I want to know, what's Grady's take on his favourite scene?
I think the one that sticks in my mind the most, that I laughed at the most, was the fence hopping. There's a number of others, like when they're talking about the plan, and the plan keeps changing and speeding up, and that scene's pretty cool to me as well, where they were, originally going to go to his mum's, and then they were going to go to Liz's house, and then that they were going to go to the Winchester, and the plan just kept changing. Yeah. So there's that one as well. But those are the 2 off the top of my head that truly were awesome. The throwing the weapons at the very first zombie that showed up as well, like frisbeeing discs.
That one is definitely my favorite scene. Like, I laughed my ass off at that as a teenager, and even now, it's still one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It is really goddamn good. Oh man, I think the scene that what really makes it funny for me is the scene is when they're throwing stuff at it, but they're just throwing like any random garbage they can get their hands on, and then he flips the disc, like the record, and then they have to like flick through all the records to look for the bad ones that they can biff at it, and it's just something very ridiculous and surreal about it that I just think is really funny. And then it ends, the perfect way when they both actually just get like blunt objects and they just start beating them to death. And then it slowly just gets more desperate as they're just continuously smashing them over the head. And yeah, I was beside myself with that. It was great.
It's definitely a highlight. Like again, I watched this movie with my partners on the couch, and when the CD or the vinyl got brought up the first time and thrown out the window, everybody just sort of looked at each other going like, that
another call forward, another call forward. Or another setup is probably.
Yeah.
No.
Everyone was like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. And
yeah, I never picked that up the first time. I just thought it was just kind of out. I always just assumed it was in the basket, but rewatch it's like, no, they do set that up really well.
Mm. I think that's one of the things that always makes sense in this movie. Like, nothing really happens randomly. It usually is to set up a joke that will pay off later. Even the smallest sentences like, oh, I don't think Pete would want me driving his car. And then, like, 2 minutes later, oh, I don't think he'd mind. Everything is a setup. And everything pretty much hits a home run off that setup as well. There are some things that fizzle, but there's ultimately a whole lot of good things as well that are super duper enjoyable throughout the movie.
Yeah, and like something that I really liked about this film that I enjoyed way more than the first time I watched it is Nick Frost's character Ed. I did not like him the first time I watched it, and I was annoyed at him throughout the film. Like, I can see why people don't like him. And, it's just like, they're going on about how, he's like this kind of toxic drain on Shaun's life. He's just like the best friend that he had as a kid. But this is a guy who's never grown up and isn't doing anything and is just, pretty much not so much ruining Shaun's life, but he's definitely holding him back from, being truly happy. And I guess I found him really annoying the first time around because he does a lot of really dumb things, like how he just starts playing that pinball machine when they're trying to hide from all the zombies, or when he's when they're listening to a news report that might have information that they need, and he starts he immediately turns it off so he can start blasting some rock music. But I guess that watching it this time round, he just is a lot more endearing. That despite all of his flaws, I can see why Shaun would still want to hang out with him and still wants him in his life, because whilst he's not the best in Apocalypse, he is genuinely a fun person, and he does have Shaun's back, when the time calls for it. He's just, not very bright, and he just doesn't know when to pick his moments. And I guess that his death scene is also pretty good, because that's a callback to a lot of different things that they were setting up over the film, and it was a genuinely, kind of touching way that he died, but then he comes back as a zombie, so even though, he's not really in his life anymore because he's dead, they still get to, hang out and do stuff occasionally, which I think is kind of cool. So yeah, he improved a lot for me this time round.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Ed serves a purpose in the film, and I think that's his biggest positive towards him. If Ed was a true human, I obviously see the positive traits, but the negative traits are obviously still there as well. It is about what you say, like picking your moments and not letting Ed bring you down all the time. Because I've seen people who have a friend like Ed that will just turn into another Ed next to them because that's the environment they're in and that's what they know. So you do have to pick and choose. And I think it worked well in that house where you had Ed and you had Pete, where they were sort of polar opposites, and Shaun could bounce off both of them as friends, and it could work around pretty well like that.
Yeah. And I think they also did a good job with Pete, their other housemate, because whilst he is definitely right in the way that Shaun and Ed are living and they need to improve themselves, he's still kind of a dick. So even though he's right, I still don't like him. which I think is definitely the best way to go with that sort of character. Then he comes back as a zombie, which is always fun.
He's not the character I hate the most.
Yeah. So for anyone, I'm pretty sure I know who that is, but for anyone who wants a movie where Peter Serafinowicz spends most of it with his shirt off, this is the film for you.
To be fair, that's everyone.
So, Grady, why did you dislike Dylan Moran's character the most?
He's just an absolute asshole.
He is.
I can't stand him.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm pretty sure he was written that way, but yeah, he's just such a spineless little prick, and I don't understand how anyone can like him.
Like, I know that, like, I remembered that he got eaten later on in the film, but so many times I just wanted him to get eaten earlier in the film, just so I didn't have to put up with him anymore.
Yeah, his poor girlfriend. She seems really nice.
Yeah, it was weird because, like, it seems like she finally stood up for herself in the bar scenes against him, and then the ending of her character is running back out to save him.
Well, I think you could... Oh, sorry, finish.
It just felt like it fell a little flat, but hey.
If I could sort of argue it in the film's favour, I think that their relationship is sort of supposed to mirror, maybe not Shaun and Liz, but definitely maybe Shaun and Ed's. Like, how... Because, okay, Liz stuck around with David, which is the name of Dylan Moran's character, and someone that she clearly shouldn't have been with. Like, it's obvious that she knew from the start that, he's in love with her roommate, and the only reason they hung around back in uni was because, he was into her. And, she's still, trying to, have a relationship with him and still trying to, keep him, but he's still clearly in love with with her roommate, and he's just kind of a dick, but she still ends up throwing her life away pointlessly for him. So I guess you could argue that it kind of mirrors Ed and Shaun, that these are two people who just kind of need to let each other go and, let them live their own lives so that they can live better ones. I guess. I don't think... Maybe that probably isn't what they're going for, but,
You're trying to spin this into something good. In reality, they just threw away a pretty good character arc they could have had with Diane. Having her run back out after David. Like, she still would have died for sure, but you could have had her die in a different way rather than running after her partner who, was, as you say, a bit of a dick. And, they just figured out that wasn't really there for her at all.
Yeah.
But hey...
But don't get me wrong, I love Dylan Moran. Fantastic comedian. I loved him in Black Books. His character here is an asshole.
I don't know if I've seen him from a whole lot, but he plays the asshole pretty well.
Yeah. He does play assholes in other things, but it's more of like a joke. Well, it's more fun kind of. It's the fun kind of asshole. I mean, whereas this guy is like the really like spineless asshole coward kind of thing. And the other ones, it's more of like in Black Books, it's more of like an aloof, really fun kind of asshole that you'll love to laugh at.
I didn't know there was such a range to assholes in films.
There's a whole rainbow of assholes, Grady.
Oh no. What's the far end of the spectrum of assholes?
Oh man, if it had to be like the big gaping black hole of asshole at the very end, man, it's hard to pick just one, I mean, there's the pointlessly psychotic asshole, like who's the guy from Whiplash, the psychotic music teacher, played by J. Jonah Jameson. That's not his actual name.
Played by J. Jonah Jameson. Champion, you have Google in front of you.
I do. Google.
You've got this. You will answer this asshole spectrum question.
I can't believe I forgot. J.K. Simmons! I kept thinking Gene Simmons, and it's like, that's not him. That's the guy from Black Sabbath.
Hmm.
I'm now looking up where Gene Simmons is from.
No, he's from Kiss, but...
Oh, come on! Well, I don't know music, alright? I think it's obvious that I don't know music, I don't know actors, I don't know what I'm doing, so leave me alone, alright?
I was giving you time to realize your mistake and to fix it up.
I don't... It was a long day, Grady, alright? It's been a long day.
Look, I want to give more props to this movie, so I'm going to ditch the asshole spectrum concept and just mention that there was a wheelchair zombie.
You want to know who's at the end of it, Grady? You.
Oh no.
You're at the end of it.
Oh no.
How dare you speak to me like that? Oh shit, you still there?
Yeah,
Ready,
I'm still
there?
here.
Okay. God, making me think my Discord had crashed again.
You need me. I'm your Ed to your Shaun.
I'm pretty sure if anyone's dragging anyone down, it's me.
Alright, you're the Ed to my Shaun, fine.
Hey, at least I'm not a David.
I really hope I don't have any Davids in my life, and that if I do, I'd cut them off, but cutting off toxic friends is a hard thing to do. What I was trying to say before you called me an asshole was just to give them props for the wheelchair zombie. Just thought that was kind of cool of a moment to have when there's a big, massive group of them, just for inclusion's sake. And I'm gonna change my answer because it took me a really long time to figure out what this note meant. It was my last note I wrote down. And I'm gonna change my favorite scene choice now to the quote-unquote Queen fight scene. Which obviously was the one in the bar to the Queen song.
Which Queen song was it, Grady? Huh? Where's your music knowledge?
That's not music knowledge, that's memory. And I don't have a memory.
I don't remember what song it was either.
I just remember enjoying it enough to write it down. And even if Queen fight scene was not very descriptive and confused me later on, we didn't have many major fight scenes in this film. There was a few little ones here and there, or sort of escape scenes. This was the big full-on fight scene.
It isn't really an action-y kind of movie. It does focus more on sort of the melodrama from the characters themselves.
More
It's
sort
not
of
like
romantic elements, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like Hot Fuzz, which is a straight-up action movie.
It was Don't Stop Me Now.
That's it. Okay. I don't remember anything. I don't remember.
To be fair, You're My Best Friend by Queen was also in here, so it's fine. 2 Queen songs. No Kiss songs, though. Overall, good film. I feel like there's nothing for me to sit here and shit on, so I don't actually have a whole lot left to talk about with this film.
It's a tightly written film. It's really funny. It doesn't drag. It's really well paced. The cast is phenomenal. It is a fantastic cast, which is probably the cast and the writing are definitely they're probably the 2 strongest parts of this film. Actually, no, the cast, writing, and the cinematography. That's most of the movie, Grady. This film's just amazing, is what I'm trying to get across.
But not as good as Hot Fuzz.
Not as good as Hot Fuzz. However, it was pretty much made by the same people, so I think this also marks the second Edgar Wright film we've covered so far.
That is correct, with Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim, yes. Which also showcased his fantastic visual style. I love that thing he does where he does it a lot in the Cornetto Trilogy, and he does it a bit in some of his other films. It's that thing where characters are doing completely mundane or superfluous tasks, but it's shot with like these really fast-paced zooms and these quick these quick close-ups, everything like that. Even if it's something like taking a whiz or making a cup of tea or shutting a door, I love that stuff. He does it in all of the Cornetto Trilogy films. I don't know if it has like a specific name to it, but I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's called Those Mundane Activities, but with super fast zooms and cool cuts and amazing things that Edgar Wright does, all hyphenated. It's in textbooks.
All is one word, just a massive jumbled letters.
Did you? We studied film and TV together. You studied that term. How do you not remember that term? It was massive. We had to write it on that year 11 test.
I'm pretty sure we did joke that we did make a joke along those lines that was what it was called.
Probably.
I do remember making that joke multiple times.
I'm trying to think, really. Cover me for a second while I think.
Well, what am I supposed to cover you with? Actually, something I do kind of want to touch on here is I did really like how the relationship between our two characters sort of developed as the film went on. And like at the beginning, they're the fun, goofy mates, they're goofing around, and then slowly as the film goes on, Shaun starts to realize the bad influence that Ed has had on his life. But it doesn't take the expected turn that like they end up hating each other, and Ed ends up as sort of a pseudo kind of bad guy towards the end. They still are friends, and they do like each other. It is more just Shaun starting to slowly realize that whilst he does want Ed in his life, I don't think he just wants to kind of doesn't want as much of Ed in his life as he has had before, which we do get kind of the end when Ed is turned into a zombie, and they occasionally hang out together, but to a more healthy degree, I think.
I wash my face and fold my washcloth.
God damn it! That took me a second. Way to throw out that joke that literally 3 people on Earth are ever going to get.
Mm-hmm. But 2 of them are sitting right here.
True.
And hey, that's 2/3 of my target audience.
God damn. Anyway, before we wrap up and go into statistics, Grady, anything you want to add?
I'm sure you'll probably wrap it up as a part of your statistics, but something that was bugging me throughout the entire film was Diane's actress. Like, I just knew her. And I was so certain I knew her, and then with maybe 20 minutes left in the film, I finally Googled, and she's one of the aunts from the new Chilling Adventures of Sabrina TV show. And at that point, a weight was lifted off my shoulders as I'd finally figured out who this person was that I damn well knew.
I didn't know you went for that Riverdale kind of stuff.
Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, 10 out of 10. Riverdale, never watched it.
Didn't they have a crossover with Riverdale?
I believe so. I have not seen it, because it was Sabrina appearing in Riverdale, not the other way around. Sabrina got cancelled. Whoops.
It did, but I think Riverdale's still going on for some reason.
Riverdale probably makes money.
It does make a lot of money, but oh man, have you read some of the plot lines and stuff to Riverdale, dude? It is a wild dumpster fire of a show, dude. I'm not kidding you.
I feel like we've talked about everything that wasn't Shaun of the Dead in this podcast episode. We've just gone...
We'll move on to US politics at some point.
Shaun of the Dead, good movie. Now here's this cool other thing.
I wouldn't call Riverdale cool. I'd call it an interesting dumpster fire. Is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, that's fair. But you can throw stats out if you want. No, it's fine.
Okay, okay, this film is considered a cult classic despite the fact that it actually did pretty well at the box office. It wasn't like a colossal blockbuster smash, but it still did pretty well. Like, it was made on a budget of $6.1 million, and it made $30 million at the box office. And of course, it went on to spawn the full trilogy. It absolutely catapulted Simon Pegg, way into like... would you call him an A-lister? If not A-lister, it's borderline A-list territory. He's been in like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. So he's done pretty well.
He's up there for sure.
He's definitely up there. Nick Frost, not so much, but he still had a pretty solid career. Edgar Wright has gone on to do a lot of things. Baby Driver obviously being one of his biggest ones. He also worked on the Ant-Man film as well. The Adventures of Tintin, I think, was another one. A lot of and of course, a lot of the other cast who have gone on to do some really fantastic stuff. Like, I think Martin Freeman and Dylan Moran are two obvious standouts from the cast. So anyway, great movie, great cast.
And hopefully the people listening are totally okay with that vague, slightly rule-breaking definition of cult classic, because we're about to turn it on its head right now, because a lot of these ones that I've lined up, at this point, Campion has a vague idea around the next 4, and then it goes off the rails as I've been put in charge with finishing it up. So I've already plotted out until the end of the year at this point, and Campion's just along for the ride. And some of mine may not be cult classics by some formal definitions, but they are movies.
they're films, so they fulfill half the definition. And isn't 50% pretty much a passing score anyway?
C's get degrees.
Oh, I think in the US, 50% is still a fail. So
it's either 55 or 60 counts as a pass, I think.
Yeah.
Look, if it's a unit standard in New Zealand NCA system, 50%. That's all you need.
Anyway, Grady, what is the film we're going to be looking at next time?
By special request of Campion, the next film we will be watching is The Secret of Nim.
That's a cult classic, right? Like, I'm pretty sure it is.
Look, you picked it. That's the only one I think that you picked out of the next God knows how many. 26?
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, the next episode we'll be covering the animated Don Bluth classic, The Secret of Nim. Love that movie. Can't wait for Grady to shit all over it and hate it.
I'm sure I will. And I think, just to mention, it is going to be kicking off our animated season. So we've been kind of doing these sort of 4-episode chunks. Usually, a movie I've seen, a movie Campion's seen, a movie neither of us have seen, and a movie that both of us have seen. And the next 4, we're sort of throwing that format out the window, and we're going to just be doing animated films. That's the next theme for the next 4 episodes.
We threw it out intentionally, and not because I've seen exponentially more animated films than Grady has.
Look, and then we keep it thrown out, because I've got themes for the next 3 seasons after that, so...
3?
Hey.
When did we pick the other 2?
This is what happens when you put me in charge. It goes off the rails.
Anyway, everyone, thank you for joining us today on Cold Potato. As always, I have been Campion, joined by my good buddy Grady, filling in for my good buddy Grady, and we will see you next time.